more minute, we will go ahead and get started. In the meantime, if you would jump in the chat and just share with us one thing that you are grateful for the month of May. One thing you're grateful for the month of May.
And make sure you have your journal, and something to write with. This is your time, your journal, something to write with. Yes, yes, yes.
What happened to the Spanish music? You got to put.
Oh, I turned it down so they can hear it.
No, yeah, but yeah, that's not everybody drink coffee. That's my morning. That's my wake up. Okay. Some of y'all don't know what I'm talking about.
All right, grab your journal, something to write with. We're about to get the party started with your personal, intimate time. Yes, yes.
Excellent, excellent.
Chair dance with me.
Now you getting in people's business.
See?
Somebody, I'm saying, now you getting in people's business. Somebody tapping their foot underneath, and that's good enough for them. Now you want to judge people dancing style. That's what you do.
All right. Something you're grateful for in the month of May.
Excellent. All right. Okay. Got some answers rolling in. Excellent. Outstanding. Congratulations, Miss Carlene.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Good.
It is graduation season. I love it.
All right, everyone. Once again, thank you all so much for joining us for session 2 of our masterclass baggage claim.
Yeah.
For those of you who may not know us, my name is Walter Jennings.
My name is Charmaine Jennings.
And we are the founders of Chosen Life Specialists. We provide arts-infused relationship counseling and coaching. And so it is our pleasure and our honor to be with you all this morning as we delve into this next session of the masterclass that is based upon our book, How the West Was Won. And so we're so glad that you are joining us. And so, yeah, we're going to climb right into our this particular session. And so, again, this is a part of a 4-part series. And so these are master classes that we're going to be hosting every kind of quarter. And so the last one that we did in March, I know we have some people here who joined us for the one in March, and thank you all for coming back and for helping to spread the word. And so today we're going to be talking about wounds and scars. We're talking about those passport stamps. So what experiences are you carrying forward with you in your relationships that may be impacting the quality of your interactions that you may not even be aware of? And so for those of you who this is your first time joining us, I want to say thank you so much for investing in yourself and being here this morning. And so also too, as a reminder, if you want to take note of the other 2 dates that we have coming up for the remainder of the year, go ahead and add that to your calendar. We look forward to having you.
Good. It's a great check-in with yourself. Again, you were designed to heal yourself. And so the biggest thing is empowering others to heal themselves. Make sure you have a journal, something to write with, so you can take your notes and or follow up with us. We thank you for putting in the chat area too the things that you're grateful for.
Absolutely.
And so we see springtime. We have a daughter's graduation. Some of you are just saying great morning, not good morning, but great morning. Happy Saturday. Love that. And just some other things to be grateful for. Peace and unity.
Yeah, my brother Eric say rest, and I know why he say that because he deal with them students and them children, and they done gone home for the summer. He has released them to parents.
Well, won't he will every time.
Yes, indeed.
And then I love that. Thankful for life. Yes, we are on this side. Life means that we have an opportunity to experience, explore, to love more, to appreciate more, and so we thank you for that. So yes, and wonderful. And so just make sure that, we have our journals and we're ready to dive in. Our goal with Chosen Life Specialists and our vision and our mission is to redefine the culture of relationship wellness, the relationship that you have with yourself. We want that to thrive, the relationship you have with others. And then our mission is to use arts-infused counseling, coaching, retreats, boot camps, all of these different experiences to help you to be empowered and to be enlightened. So you can be contagious. You can take that information back to your family, to your friends, to your community, so that, again, we are healthy as a people.
Absolutely. So, Chosen Life is actually built upon 12 principles, which you all see here, which is serve as a backronym for our name, Chosen Life. And so, you all can note those there. And so, we are very proud to be founded upon these as the core values of our organization.
All right. And so again, we ask you to have your journal out, some notes, because you're going to leave here today with tools, with tips, and also you will be able to uncover at the core root cause of some of maybe conflicts or things like that. You will start to see a pattern, and you will be able to identify your patterns, which will help you in your future, your relationships, your current and future relationships.
And again, to reiterate, these master classes are actually built upon our book, How the West Was Won. This is our life and love story. These are our individual experiences that we brought with us into the relationship and how they have impacted the quality of our marriage and the lessons that we have actually learned from them.
Absolutely. So yeah, we got a lot of stuff up in there, but we're gonna pull out something today. So the biggest thing, up, secure the cabin, make sure you are ready to be honest with yourself, because you are in a relationship with yourself for the rest of your life. Now, last session, you didn't have to attend the last session for this one to make sense. They are all individuals, so you can feel free to invite someone to come or participate, and we will have the replay from last time. I thought I posted it on our YouTube channel. I have not. I will make sure I do that and send that out. But last time we talked about, could you tell your story in 6 words? Could you tell your story in 6 words? In our book, we have our 6-word story. Walter's is as follows.
Yeah, mine's is raised in church, left, found God. So that's my story. That's my primary story in 6 words.
And mine is Jamaican roots, Florida palms, village raised. And so you guys really analyzed and broke down our 6-word story and did an amazing job. Y'all reading all of y'all, hey, like killing me softly with his words. Y'all were definitely analyzing us and breaking down our story. And it was amazing. So we know we have some of you wonderful, beautiful people that actually did the homework.
Yeah.
And so this is your time to shine. Yes, you have been waiting for this moment. Yes, it's time.
Yeah.
It's your time.
I had some people out in the street was like, yeah, we ready. I got my 6-word story ready. So do we have any volunteers who would like to share their 6-word story with us?
And if you don't have your 6-word story, that's okay, because you can create your own personal 6-word story. Okay. Okay. We have it in the chat area. All right. Now, if you want to come off mute and read your own 6-word story, you can, but we don't mind putting it in our voice. But yeah, you're welcome to unmute if you would like. Mr. Scott, I see yours is in the chat area. Okay.
Northern boy, Southern man, godly husband.
Excellent. And Eric, a little bit about the inspiration and the background behind your story? A little bit.
I'm born and raised in Detroit. I left when I was 17 and a half. Came down south, Tuskegee, Alabama. Stayed down south by way of Atlanta, Georgia, and here in Tampa, of course. And, my focus is being the best husband, I can, as far as following godly principles to be the husband, which, of course, takes care of the household and your children. It's best for your wife.
Yeah. I will say that one of the things that I really love about your 6-word story, obviously, I'm a big fan of geography. So I love the North and South. But what I really love is the transition from boy to man.
Absolutely.
And so I think that says a lot when you talk about your development and how those things have carried forward with you. And then obviously moving into godly. So you go from like almost like geographical to that spiritual piece and then that role as a husband. So very powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I would imagine all of those things have been natured, but also nurtured and are constantly in progress, right? So the boy, the man, and even the husband constantly learning, right? Learning things about each of those identities. Beautiful.
Excellent. Anyone else have a 6-word story they'd like to share?
I was kind of nice out loud. So Louisiana chick. I wanted to say New Orleans chick, but it'll make 7 words. So Louisiana chick, people pleaser, God pleaser.
Give us that again.
Louisiana chick, people pleaser, God pleaser.
Excellent. And if you would tell us a little bit about the background behind your story, Dr. Scott.
So I grew up in New Orleans and everything New Orleans, that's who I am. The food, the culture, everything. But I took some of that culture, that attitude, and tried to just live the world through those lens. And the world doesn't see life through Louisiana. And so I'm just that person. And I always make a joke about, oh, you're gonna make my Louisiana come out or my McKay come out. Very cultural, very I see the world with a lens of culture all the time. That's my New Orleans in me. And people pleaser, I love seeing people happy. So I thought the way life works is to please people and follow God. But I had to learn that I please God and I serve people. So
Amen.
Excellent.
I had to learn that in million ways. So that's how it is. So I just serve people now and please God.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. And that transition between, because we sometimes it can, especially if you are pleasing people of God, it can seem like you're doing God's work. Ooh, woo. And that is a gut punch of a reality when you meet that, you know, that distinguishing factor.
That's outstanding. All right. So for those of you, again, who may not have completed your 6-word story, again, this is something that we're going to encourage you that as you go through this process, if that's something that you would like to share as we come into future sessions, please let us know.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful tool in helping to kind of encapsulate your story into those 6 words. It's a great challenge.
It is. And it really is a conversation piece too, to be able to talk about your story. So in our session today, we know we earn when we learn, we get. So our learning targets are as follows. We want to distinguish between wounds, emotional, relationship wounds, scabs, and scars. Identifying your top emotional wounds. Do you know what they are? Each of us typically at the core of every conflict, 2 of our emotional wounds show up. Same reoccurring. And we want to make sure before you leave today, you know what yours are and have strategies on how to make sure that you're interrupting the patterns of how you're responding to those things. We want you to discover your wounds, what those wounds crave. Sometimes we are creating relationships that are unhealthy because it's really trying to heal that wound. And we've gotten so comfortable in it that it becomes a mask, right? And we're creating these unhealthy relationships. So we want you to be able to discover that and then learn strategies to promote healing, wellness, and growth. So these are our learning targets for today.
Yes, and for Chosen Life, again, we are very adamant about ensuring that our individuals are focused on their me work. So the MMI, that's the me, myself, and I work, but then also the we work as well. Oftentimes, people will put us in the box of thinking that we are just focused on collective relationships and couples, but no. In every relationship, it always starts with the individual. So defining whether you are going to be focused on your individual work or on your we work, but know that we're here for both, and the content is going to be pertinent to both areas.
And if you are a believer, meaning you believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, then pretty much when we say me work, it's you and God. It's pretty much your intimate relationship with yourself and your designer, your creator. All right. Our purpose today, we're going to review your passport. So we want you to unpack, man, we want you first of all to identify what your focus is. Are you focusing on having a healthier relationship with yourself or with someone else, family member, co-workers, all right, whatever that is. So is anyone, for example, is anyone focusing on their work relationships? Maybe relationships with their boss, or anyone focusing on work relationships? Got some individuals who are working on their professional relationships the last time.
All right. Okay. Anyone focus on better relationships with family members, better relationship within your family dynamic?
You can virtual raise your hand, or if you're on camera, you can raise your hand. Family relationships. Okay.
Right.
Anyone focus on their relationship with themselves? So your personal relationship with self? Okay, got it. Okay, awesome, awesome, awesome. All right. All right. And then anyone else? Okay, so other we relationships. So it's either self or maybe you're focusing on a collective relationship or maybe a combination, right? So pretty much today, we want you to keep that focus in mind, okay? So we're going to review your passport, meaning what is my history of experiences in new and unfamiliar places. When you have a passport, you need it because you're traveling to somewhere that's either unfamiliar or a new experience. But either way, you're leaving your home destination and you're going somewhere else, okay? And so, and thank you guys for using the chat. We're seeing that you guys have putting your information in the chat area. We're going to move on to passport stamp types. All right. When you leave, when you use your when you use your passport and you go into another country, they're going to give you a stamp, right? They're going to document that you were there, document that the interaction occurred, document your experience. So it's going to have a stamp there. And that stamp represents an experience, okay? And you may only have one stamp from that country. You may go back to that country and travel regularly, right? So you may have multiple stamps, okay? So we're using that as a metaphor to really talk about your relationship experiences. And then lastly, when you leave that country, right? When you leave that country, there's an exit protocol and a re-entry protocol when you come back home. And so we're going to really talk about that relating our relationships.
Absolutely. All right. So the first thing that we really want to establish, right, is that when we talk about wounds and scabs and scars, really starting with the basics of exactly what those are and how it actually ties into the healing process. And so when we start with this from a physical standpoint, it's a lot easier for us to establish and see. And for any of you who may have grown up who were, I know that I'm looking at a lot of people who were outside children before the technology boom and everybody had cable and tablets and laptops. There was something called outside. And outside, right, it had a lot of dangers, toils, and snares, as they say. There were a lot of opportunities for you to get in some things that were not necessarily comfortable or good for you. And sometimes you would come back into the house with some battle wounds because you did some things, you tried some things, you saw somebody do something and you thought you could do it, and now you're walking back in the house with some things that are a reflection of your experience. And so what we want to do is actually use that to really determine and actually lay out again when we talk about wounds, what is a wound, and then what's the healing process and how we actually move from that.
All right. So there are four stages of healing, four typical stages of healing a wound. We're going to give you the four stages. Some people have three stages and they combine one or two of them, but we're going to give it to you in four stages. So first of all, a wound is an event. It's something that really occurred. And we're going to use physical wounds, for example, right? So what you see on the screen is a physical wound. And these are the four stages of healing a physical wound. So the first thing is
Homeostasis.
Homeostasis is the first one. That's where the body stops the bleeding of the wound. That's when your blood clots because it's trying to, something occurred. Let's say you got scratched, scarred, something, right? Happened to the body, the physical body, and the body needs to stop the bleeding. The biggest focus, the body tells itself it needs to clot. The blood, yeah, we need to stop bleeding.
That's right. So, yep. So the first thing that rushes on the scene is the blood actually beginning to clot or congeal together. And then it moves into the second phase, which is inflammation. This is when your white blood cells begin to be involved. Your white blood cells are intended to serve as the ambulatory system for your body. These are the ones that come on the scene and they actually start to not only treat what you see above the surface, but they also begin to treat some of the challenges and the infection and the things that are below the surface.
So street translation, this is where swelling happens, and you might see some changing in the appearance. So like if the wound was a burn, you notice your skin changes color, right? But it's the defense systems are up and the cleanup team is coming in there to start your healing journey. Then the third.
Yeah, so the third stage is proliferation. Now, proliferation is actually where the regeneration process kicks in. This is where your body on the topical or the surface level begins to start creating new skin. And so you'll notice that your skin becomes more solid. There's kind of this thin layer. Sometimes it's wet and then it begins to dry out. But then also below the layer as well, new tissue is beginning to be developed. So again, there's work that's being done below the skin, and there's work that's actually being done on the skin as well to really begin to make sure that that wound is closing up. Now, in this particular stage, you will notice that there will be something that is called a scab that is developed. There's a scab that is developed. Now, the scab is actually created by your body as a protection mechanism for the healing that is taking place below it. So your body actually naturally produces something to protect itself so that the work that needs to be done within your skin can happen.
Exactly. So while it's creating something new, it has a protective measure, a boundary, so you don't reinfect the wound, and so nothing else gets or interrupts that healing process. And then lastly, we have remodeling, or some other people call it a maturation stage, right? That's where the wound fully closes up. The cells used to repair are no longer necessary. So the cleanup team, the healing team in your body is like, hey, we're good. We're at the ending phases. Now it's just the aesthetics. We are just kind of smoothing the skin over, and any dead skin or scab starts to fall off, and it may leave a scar. But there's strengthening in the repair process. So sometimes a scar is just a receipt. It's a tattoo.
Yes.
It's saying that, hey, an event occurred here. There's a story here that occurred. So I want you to look at it as a tattoo. And for those of you who are believers, hey, Jesus Christ, he showed his scars. These are my receipts that this occurred, that an event occurred. I had an experience, and you have to listen to the person to know how it affected them. But the scar is a receipt. It's evidence that something occurred. And I look at it as a physical tattoo.
And the visibility of the scar is typically determined by the deepness of the wound. The extensiveness of the wound usually is going to be indicative of how visible that scar is going to be. So as you go deep when it comes to some of those wounds, those scars are going to be more and more visible.
Absolutely. So y'all are like, what does this have to do with our passport? Now we want you to reflect. Do you know where you are in your healing process? We want you to think about something that recently hurt you. It could be a physical wound, but we want you to think about an emotional wound, an event, a conflict, a situation, something that has recently caused you pain, hurt, mental moments that you have sat with this situation or conflict or issue. And and it may be something that's deep. It may be something that maybe just occurred and you don't even know how deep it is yet, but it's there. Okay. So think about that, because that's what we're going to use in today's process for you. Okay. Now, when you're thinking about this, when we go back to the healing process and wounds, there's 3 E's. There's the event that occurred, that's, that caused the wound, right? There's your personal experience, and then how it impacted you. How many of us have grown up in the same house with individuals, maybe a sibling, a loved one? We all grew up in the same environment, okay? We experienced the same things, but we came out with different experiences. Is anyone on here with siblings? Okay. All right. So I see a couple of you raising your hand. You all grew up with siblings. You grew up in the same house, but you guys could have had the same experience, but y'all came out of that house with completely different stories. That means you experienced the same thing, possibly, but the effect that it had on you in your life long term is completely different. How you process that trauma, how you process that event that occurred. For some of you, it might have been 3 different layers. Okay. So when it comes to the impact of an event, it might have been traumatic for you, but it might not have been traumatic for your siblings. Maybe it's like a duck. It rolled off of their back and they're like, kept it moving, and it didn't really affect them. So we have to think about that. Okay. When we're in relationships with people, romantic, co-workers, whatever, right? Events occur, conflicts occur, right? And they could cause a wound, right? How you experience it, how someone else experiences it, two completely different stories. Okay. And then the effect, the long term effect could really cause you some delay, cause you some issues, and the other person, it may not have as big of a negative effect. It may impact you emotionally. Someone else, it may impact them more mentally. And sometimes it may show up in other people in the physical, the social, or the spiritual. And so we have to understand that in relationships with people, again, you're one side of that story, they're one side of that story. But again, you guys can have two completely different experiences and communicate how it's impacting you or affecting you completely different. Mm-hmm. All right. So we wanted to first lay that out for you. All right.
Absolutely. Yeah. So with that being said, what we want you to do is to reflect on when you think about some of the experiences that you all are carrying with you. We want you to identify 2 wounds that you have experienced and that you have noticed that you have carried forward with you in a new relationship. Now, bear in mind that we are not just talking about intimate relationships. For those of you who may be coupling, we're also talking about some of your work relationships. So for example, if you had a situation where you were the team lead and you had a coworker that sabotaged the project that you all were working on, how did that experience impact the way that you move forward in the professional realm? What are some of the things that have shown up in you when it comes to you acting with other coworkers? Or for example, when you've had a friend that you had a milestone birthday and you all were planning on doing a special trip and going somewhere, and at the last minute when it was time to go, not only did this person not go, they didn't even call, didn't give a reason, just didn't show up. And maybe you were dependent on them financially, but the bottom line is this is a person that was close to you that did not show up. So again, when you think about the wounds, right? We want you to think about it comprehensively. So not just, again, from a romantic intimacy standpoint, but just in any area of your life where you notice that it is showing up in your relationships.
All right, so we're going to give you a couple of seconds. Go ahead and use your journal time to write down that, because we want you to have this in context. The way to identify or to name this wound is to be clear about what situation you want to focus on. Okay, so use your journal to do that at this time. Write down at least 2 wounds that you've experienced. And you don't have to name the wound, just write down the situation. Write down 2 things that cause you pain of some sort.
Gonna give y'all 1 more minute. Not necessarily.
All right, we have a couple seconds left before we're going to transition. All right, so hopefully you were able to identify 1 or at least 2 things that have caused you some type of pain or hurt regarding your relationship focus today. All right, and we're going to show you this 2-minute video because, we're going to be talking a lot, but this is a quick synopsis. This video is going to let you know 5 emotional wounds that we're going to focus on today, and that we actually want you to be able to identify your top 2. And then we're going to unpack them.
So the idea is the 5 wounds that you're exposed to during childhood, and then your ego designs a mask to cover the wound, but doesn't mean it's healed. It's just covered with a plaster, right? So it's a mask. So the first one, rejection, is from either parent. Rejection, like, you're not coming out with us, you're not allowed, and you took it as a rejection wound. The mask is withdrawer. So you're a person that you'll see never raises the hand in school. They're not proactive because they don't want to get any rejection anywhere. So they don't even be forthcoming. Number 2 is abandonment. which is huge with a lot of people. And abandonment is dad was too busy, mom left me too much, I was with the nanny. So the ego creates the dependency mask. That's very codependent people. So when they're in a relationship, they latch onto you with the intention that if I latch onto them, they won't leave. And that's the same reason they would leave, because you suffocated them. Third is humiliation. You look disgusting, you're a fat pig, you feel humiliated as a child, and you become a masochist. You bring pain to yourself, it can go extreme, or you're a pleaser, you don't take care of your body, you gain weight. Everybody before me. 6 people invite you to their birthday, you go to the 6th. You're never a priority. 4 is betrayal. You felt betrayed by a parent. And if you felt betrayed as a child, you become a controller. So you want to do anything not to be betrayed. And I noticed at work, I'm like, contracts, make sure it's clear. I don't like ambiguous people. I don't like mysterious people, even in love. If you're mysterious, it bothers me because it's not clear. And I'm like, what are they up to?
You need transparency.
I love transparency and love communication. Injustice is maybe your siblings were treated better than you and all of that, and you become rigid. So I only work this way. I only do things this way. My house is this way. No flexibility.
All right. So we want you to think about the 2 wound experiences that we had you to note and see if you can categorize them within the 5 emotional wounds that were just discussed. And so they're actually noted here on the screen. And so again, as we go into abandonment, that is a fear of being left alone or rejected, a feeling of being unworthy of being loved if people leave, and also the anxiety around separation or endings.
Yes, and mind you, you'll hear 5 childhood trauma. You'll hear soul wounds. You'll hear the 5 emotional wounds, because usually they occurred between birth and 18. Usually they occurred between birth and 18. Your first time experiencing betrayal, abandonment, and that moment was the event that shaped your inner child. And your inner child shows up. You could be 89 years old. If we haven't healed that inner child from that abandonment wound, you can be 89 years old and still, again, has an issue with not being sure that people are going to love you and needing that constant validation. Okay.
Absolutely. So the next one is betrayal. And so betrayal again is where someone has made a promise to you that they've broken. And this actually results in you becoming hyper vigilant in relationships. But you're also waiting for disappointment. So this is this situation where you're actually not expecting them to show up. You're expecting them to not fulfill their words. So you actually have a distrust and a disbelief in people. And then the next one is humiliation. And this is a deep shame. And shame is a key word here.
Yes.
Shame from being criticized, shunned, or being publicly shamed, right? So now this experience has led to an identity grab for you. So you have now identified that this is a part of who you are, and it results in you developing a harsh inner self-critic and also self-loathing. So you begin to now feel sorry for yourself, and then you develop a fear of being judged or exposed. And then we have injustice. Now, injustice is the feeling of feeling powerless or wrong without recourse, where you are at the whim of a system or of society, because there is something that has been perpetuated against you that you feel like you can't do anything about. And obviously that leads to anger and resentment against those in authority. And when we think about authority, that's not just law enforcement. Those in authority could be a manager. Those in authority is anyone that can wield any type of power that they could use as influence. And then there's a belief that life in and of itself is basically fundamentally unfair and unsafe.
And you'll notice a lot of these words showing up. If you're a parent or an educators, we can spot these things in the classroom when conflicts come. Well, that's not fair. That's not fair. A person who really sees and hears things that seem to be imbalanced, they're going to constantly use that word of fairness. Right. So you will notice some of the similar vocabulary. And then we have rejection. Rejection is the core belief that they're unlovable. They might be unworthy, anything that really, if people are not really showing up for them, it's like, okay, well, they just don't want to be my friend. They don't want to be connected to me. Well, maybe I'm not this or maybe I'm that. So it's fear of taking emotional risk or persistent self-doubt and low self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these wounds typically showed up somewhere. The first time your nervous system was shocked, right? Typically an event occurred that triggered this wound,
Mm-hmm.
one of these 5 wounds. Okay. And so each of these are really important for you to understand. And now we're just kind of going to unpack them even more. So as you're thinking about the focus or the thing that you wrote down, that wound, that event, right? Now we want you to go back and ask yourself, man, what is it connected to? All right. So as we're gonna even go deeper about what these wounds look like, feel, and sound like as they're showing up. And that way, by the end of this, we want you to be able to target your top 2. What are top 2 wounds that you think have been reoccurring based on some of these descriptions?
Mm-hmm.
So abandonment wound craves unconditional safety, constant reassurance, and undeniable proof of love. In your relationships or at work, is there a constant need for somebody to affirm you, to reassure you? If you're a leader or if you're in leadership or entrepreneur and you have staff members that you support or mentor, who's the one on the team that you notice needs that constant reassurance, right? They need to prove that they're valuable, right? A valuable asset to the team. They need that, need that, need that. And a lot of times our love languages are attached sometimes to these wounds.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this person has it says a quiet, deep-seated fear of being left alone, desperately wants to be chosen first, craving a sense of certainty and permanence,
Mm-hmm.
meaning they want to know they have the guaranteed, this relationship is guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
There's no stopping the relationship. For them, space, you putting space between you and them can seem very unhealthy to them.
Yeah, that's a threat.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And you needing your individual time and your me time, for them, that could seem very selfish when this wound is really infected.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they can lead to unhealthy expectations and emotional dependence.
Mm-hmm.
This can be the person that especially they just can be come off as very clingy.
All right, and the next one is the betrayal room. So the betrayal room, they are looking for safety, validation, emotional support, and the space to process grief and rebuild a shattered sense of self, right? What they want to do is they want to avoid consequences, and they want to actually be able to navigate between the guilt and the self-preservation. But to truly heal, what they really need is transparency about what has happened.
And pretty much this needs to be corrected because the first section of this is about when you're betrayed.
Mm-hmm.
The second half of this is when you yourself are the betrayer. So with all of these wounds, we're not always on, well, somebody did something to me and caused this wound. You often become your wound.
Mm-hmm.
You can assume the identity of your wound, and now you betray other people because you were betrayed.
Mm-hmm.
So at the bottom, it explains the betrayer, when you become the betrayer versus the betrayed. All right, the next one is humiliation. They want freedom from shame, guilt, and judgment. They're seeking validation, self-respect. Respect is huge for a person with a humiliation wound. While needing to set boundaries, they need to care for their own needs, not just others. They need to express who they are authentically. Sometimes they will wear a mask of not really letting people see who they are. Their nervous system typically causes them to freeze and shut down.
Yeah, this particular person is really struggling with trying to embrace who they are and trying to get the world to accept them for who they are. But they can't get that acceptance because they haven't accepted themselves.
Right. And public versus private. This is, we say this in the classroom, working with principals and teachers. I would say there's some students that their nervous system freezes up when you randomly call on them to say something publicly. Some people need time to process. So that public versus private and how you address them and deal with issues is huge for someone with a humiliation wound. An injustice wound. This person is about fair. Fair to them, you have to learn their definition definition of what that is, but this wound typically is fair means equal, but they look through the lens of injustice. They hear through the lens of injustice. All of these wounds, we see and hear through them when we allow them to lead our lives and we don't heal them. And this person needs self-acceptance, vulnerability. They need to let go of the need for external validation. This person needs to look more inward. Okay. They're trying to control environmental things to make everything so that they can so that things around them feel fair, so that they can have a sense of safety.
Absolutely. Yeah, when we talk, before we move off of this one, yeah, when we talk about the circle of control, the circle of influence, and that circle of concern, this person is trying to control the things that are actually in their circle of concern.
Right.
And so they're burdened down by that. And when you do that, it actually causes you to miss those things that are actually within your sphere of control.
But control is huge for this individual, and the sense of not feeling good enough when, again, when it's a wound, something's unhealthy. And then the last one is rejection. I think this is the last one.
Yes.
The rejection wound, a deep desire for belonging, acceptance, and validation. Feeling worthy means I'm a part. I'm ushered into this environment, or people are accepting me coming into this space. They can be hypersensitive. They can operate in avoidance. I'm going to reject people before they can reject me. Okay. They can lash out to protect themselves from further hurt. And healing requires self-acceptance, understanding past hurts, and building secure relationships.
Right. Yeah. Now, how these things show up, we talked about, again, the emotional wounds. Now, how these things typically show up. Now, rejection shows up as fueling social anxiety. So this person is constantly having these intrusive thoughts and these voices in their head about people, the way that they're looking at them, and people not liking them. They're, again, having that fear of being criticized or not acceptance, which keeps them from actually engaging in interaction because of that fear.
Yeah. So and then we have abandonment. What is a trigger for abandonment? Clinginess. They can become clingy, separation anxiety. So when people just leave, we see this definitely in younger children a lot more. Adults, we mask it more. The fear of being left or forgotten. Some of our elders sometimes feel this way. They've gotten old now, and now they're not relevant, and people don't love them, and people have just forgotten all about them. So you might hear some of our elders say, people don't come by anymore. They don't call anymore. They feel abandoned.
Absolutely. And humiliation creates a sense of, again, that shame of the person not being worthy of actually interacting with other people. And then so it creates this dynamic where the person wants to be seen, but they actually are afraid of being seen as well. Because if people really knew the truth about who they are as a total person, would they accept them? And they don't believe that they actually will. So it gives them anxiety around even having authentic self-expression.
Betrayal. The betrayal wound is, man, it's very deep because it breeds distrust, right? I only trust what I can control. So if I don't have any control, I don't trust it. If you're the type of person that you real quiet, you always the one quiet in the room, I don't trust that person. See, quiet people, you can't trust them, because you don't have control over what they choose to release to you. So that betrayal wound is huge. You can become hyper vigilant. You will psychoanalyze somebody walking in the room and you will be way wrong. Because especially if they're quiet, they may just be shy, right? But betrayal wound is huge. It goes back to control and trust.
Absolutely. And then injustice, these individuals, they actually are driven by, and it shows up as perfectionism, but they also are suppressing their emotions. And so these people are usually very black and white and legalistic. So they completely are dismissive when it comes to emotions. And they also are very afraid of being of failure and also of being wrong, because again, it speaks to against the lack of that legalism and those things that will put them in a position of being able to prove their point in a black and white situation.
Yeah. All right. So these are some triggers. Hopefully we're warming up. Hopefully.
Hey, hopefully. I'm just doing my job. I ain't trying. Look, trust me, we're gonna get into ours. Don't worry about it. Miss Shada say, don't be talking about me. Ain't nobody doing nothing.
Man, Ooh, so how about, I think we talked about it last month. We realized that, man, later in our marriage, before we knew about these wounds, we realized, first of all, we have the same wounds, but they showed up completely different. And before we got married in college, when he broke up with me, y'all, okay, yes,
That's what we doing.
we just gonna put it out there.
30 years ago.
When he broke up with me, y'all, in public, so I have a humiliation wound and I have a rejection wound. So for somebody with a rejection wound, humiliation wound, and you get broken up with in public, oh nah, it ain't going down like this. Okay.
And on the other side of that, part of the reason why I broke up with her is because I wasn't getting the time that I felt like we needed. So for me, it was a rejection wound on my side. Ironically, we both have the same emotional wounds, right? So because we were aware of them, now we're harming one another
Absolutely.
in the same ways because we're both asking for and not getting the same things.
Yeah. And the fact that he took me out to feed me before he dumped me, y'all, I was angry. Angry Jamaican came out. I'm just gonna say that.
You mad that I fed you for a game?
I'm mad that we was in a public place.
It was the last supper.
You could have broke up with me in a private place. But these are things, that show up in our relationships, right? For somebody to reject you in a public place, it triggered two wounds at the same time. Okay. Where for him, he felt rejected, which is why the breakup came, right? And then as far as his humiliation wound, for him, I didn't fight for the relationship because when he broke up with me, he gave me all these reasons why the relationship wasn't working. And he was like, "What do you think?" And I was like, "I don't have anything to think. You can take me home when you get ready." Stone cold face. I didn't give him any emotional energy. I was like, "Okay, well, if that's the way you feel, all right." It was like, "As you were, sir. You can take me home now." And for him, he felt rejected by that. And I'm like, I'm not gonna fight for a relationship. You just did a whole sermon on why it ain't working. So
it confirmed what I was already doing.
But that was my ego. That was my ego, and that was my pride kicking in because I was humiliated because it was in a public place. I would have been more open to be more vulnerable if it happened in a private environment. So knowing our loved ones, when we have courageous conversations with them, it is so important to know, man, is this better to have it in a public place or a private place?
And we want to say this too, right? So this is not about psychoanalyzing other people and telling them what their wounds are. And this is about, as we understand ourselves and as we address our wounds, this is going to naturally help us be mindful in how we're interacting with other people because we're a lot more mindful of ourselves. So just know that this is not about you going around turning into Dr. Phil. Right. This is not that. But it's an opportunity for us to, as we're focusing on our work, we will find that our interactions with others will become healthier.
I love this in the chat, Cam and Shanoa. All right, you guys just shared that. Man, she says, it says, I've always thought that I had an abandonment wound, but now I'm realizing after hearing this,
I am the abandoner.
Oh, and we all do that. Sometimes I'm telling you, if you have a rejection wound, you become a rejecter. You become a rejecter. If you have an abandonment wound, you abandon people before they can abandon you.
Right.
You have a humiliation wound. You either will sometimes you will create humiliation in yourself. You might become the class clown. Like, I'm just going to make a joke out of humiliating myself. Or sometimes you will become a bully where you humiliate other people, right?
Yeah, and I want to comment. I see someone, iPhone, I'm not sure, but it says, this sounds like the symptoms of growing up Black in America. Absolutely. I think from a cultural standpoint, right? The way these things show up for us as a people looks like some of the things that we've seen. But recognize that, again, these emotional wounds also show up in the way that we're being treated often by the powers that be as well. And so, again, we're going to dig into that a little further, but just know that these 5 emotional wounds are not just specific to Black people, to all of us, but the way that they show up relative to sometimes the power and positioning that we have, the way that those things can be administered looks totally different.
And until we unpack and uncover what our wounds are based on our things that occurred in our home, things that occurred in our community, and our overall world and society, and how you've experienced your American experience or wherever you grew up, it is really important for you to identify that so that you can heal those wounds. So now, by now, we hope that you have identified what are your top 2 emotional wounds. What are your top 2? Now, you don't have to put them in the chat if you don't want to, but we want to make sure that you give us a thumbs up that you have identified the 2 for you, because at the root of every conflict, when you're speaking, you're seeing, you're hearing, you'll be surprised that, wow, it goes back to this. It goes back to this. Wow, this argument I had with this person, I brought this up. This was what I saw. I saw injustice, or I felt like they were trying to embarrass me, or man, they didn't show up for me, abandonment, or nah, they weren't telling me the truth, or they're trying to, you know what I mean? Or they won't give me power or control. Maybe this betrayal, or maybe rejection.
And we got a couple of thumbs up. So thank you for those of you who identified that you have your two emotional wounds. And again, if any of you would like to share your top 2 emotional wounds, if you could want to put them in the chat, you absolutely can. But if you don't, we completely understand as well.
Oh, that one was big that you put in the chat area, Miss Shonda. That was big.
Yeah.
Because telling harmful jokes about yourself before beating somebody else to the punch.
Yeah.
Before they can say something negative about you.
Yeah, that's that self-deprecating that comes along with that humiliation wound.
That's masochism, and that's where you're harming yourself before others can harm you. And this even shows up, this can show up in your sexual life as well, where some people like being beaten, or they like being tortured, or because it's like, at least I'm in control of how people harm me, instead of me being vulnerable to other people's harm and the control. So yeah, sometimes that humiliation wound can lead to that.
Yeah, we got a great comment from Cam and Shanoa. They say it's so horrible because in the church setting, when a reprimand is on the table, I volunteer for extreme transparency. Then I ghost the people after I've laid out all the facts. I feel that when my character and integrity are called into question, then we have nothing left to talk about ever.
Ooh. And see, we call that a door slam. There are certain personalities types that they have a hardcore door slam. Dang, you just go.
Do tell. Do we know anyone?
We do, and I am one of those. Okay.
Kill switch activated.
Yes, some people, when you have exhausted emotion, I give an emotional energy. Emotional energy. I done said it. Told you. I done broke it down. I done created a graphic, and we done talked about it. And we're still coming back to have these conversations. You are absolutely right. By the time I slammed that door, I sashay away, and I peace.
Yeah.
I have peace, and I paid for that peace. It was expensive. So yes, it's called a door slam. But it is so important though not to slam the door where you won't, because we still have to operate in community, right? But what it means is this issue, I've said it, now I have my boundary, and you no longer have access to me in the same way that you did, right? But you leave room for reconciliation, you leave room for for future conversations. They're just not in control of your responses and access. But that's huge. In church, we got to do better. Some of you guys have chose to put some of yours in the chat area, so we see.
Yep.
Some of you guys have identified abandonment, humiliation. We definitely, our top 2 were humiliation and rejection. And 2 different genders, 2 different experiences, cultural backgrounds. Our rejection looks different. Nobody's wound looks like somebody else's wound. And we see that with our physical wounds, right? Nobody's wound heals exactly as somebody else's wound heals. Okay. All right. We got a couple more coming in too.
Excellent.
We got betrayal. We got injustice. That's huge. If you're in a romantic relationship, it benefits you to know your partner's wounds. It benefits you, but you want to let them identify it. So in the book, How the West Won, just a short poetic story. We have a poem in there called Cheaters Never Win. I wrote this poem, maybe it's been over 20 years ago, and I revised it. So this is a 2.0 version. These are 4 stanzas in the poem. We want you guys to see, can you identify which wound is demonstrated in these 4 stanzas as I read them? So which wound do you believe is represented here? Cheaters never win. They still grin and spin. They are more dangerous than the CIA. So entitled they never want to pay. Cheaters work hard to draw a line in the sand. Dare you to be confident. Why they take your man? Strategically study all of your weaknesses. They gather intel about your past and present secrets. They test relationship fragility by casting their bait. Pretend to respect marriage when their loyalty is fake. They are the best empathetic ears for your relationship problems. They flirt, twerk, and speak about 300 ways to solve them. They wrap a 20% lie and 80% truth. Wear innocent clothing to manipulate and seduce. They cling to the wealth of men who are taken. They hurt because they're hurt and flirt with temptation. 4 stanzas. Oh, I saw. Got some snaps. These are 4 stanzas in this poem. Cheaters never win.
See betrayal. So we see betrayal.
What 2 wounds or what wound do you believe is represented? It doesn't have to be 2. It could just be 1. What do you see? What do you hear in the voice of this poem? You guys can turn on your mic if you got access to your mic.
I say betrayal of a friend because it sounds like maybe somebody who got real close to somebody pretending to be a close friend just to peep out their relationship because maybe they were interested in their partner.
Okay.
Maybe get close with this person, be a friend, give her advice, maybe to leave that person because I'm finna snatch them.
Okay.
A homewrecker, basically.
Okay, got it. Love it. Thank you for sharing that.
Laquita says rejection.
Okay. So rejection. Ooh, talk about that. The rejection one. How you processed it as rejection.
Laquita, can you unmute? We don't know if she may not be able to unmute.
If you're in a position to unmute.
She may not be able to unmute.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it. No worries. If you can unmute. Miss Carlene says betrayal and injustice. Miss Carlene, if you're able to unmute, can you talk to us about injustice? Why do you hear injustice in these 4 stanzas?
Well, it says here that so entitled, they never want to pay. So that entitlement puts somebody kind of in the front row and you in the back.
Okay. Love it. Love it.
Yeah. And Miss Carlene, I like that as well too, especially when you talk about the CIA. And again, this goes back to that positioning. And there are certain entities that believe that because of the position or the title they hold, that they should be entitled to certain things that they're actually not entitled to. So
entitled to your time, entitled to the people in your life, entitled to your contact list, right? There's a couple of wounds that are showing up in this. So again, we're not trying to create a bunch of psychoanalyzers. Y'all gonna go out and be like, "Oop, I hear the man." But we want you to self-reflect on you. What are your intrusive thoughts, right? What is it going back to? And this just will cause you to pause to really think about. And this is a poem again I wrote 20-something years ago. And so you could tell, man, at the core of this story, what wounds are exposed.
All right. So as we move into again some of these emotional wounds, we want to extract some lessons from these. So that way we can really begin to focus on what are some of the strategies and the tools that can be used to combat them.
So you have your 2 wounds that you identified. We're going to break down the lemonade lesson and the sweet tea tips. Okay. So what lessons do you want to draw from them and things that you want to be, mindful of? And then what are the tips?
All right. So when we talk about rejection, one of the things that the rejection wound wants or desires is belonging and acceptance. So this is, again, what the rejection wound is actually wanting. They're wanting belonging and acceptance. They're looking for validation, security, and also authenticity. So people that are rejected want to be accepted for who they actually are, but they can often be afraid of showing the world who they truly are for fear of rejection. And so when we think about it from a spiritual perspective, for those of you who are believers, it's important to remember that your value is not in people's opinion.
Yes.
1 Peter 2:4 says, "Come to him, the risen Lord, as to a living stone, which men rejected and threw away, but which is choice and precious in the sight of God." So just because man rejects you, or man doesn't accept you, that doesn't mean that you are not valuable. That doesn't mean that you're not special. In fact, you may be being rejected because you are special, because you are valuable, and what people can't categorize or put in the box, they will absolutely reject.
There's self-esteem and others esteemed. You want to be mindful about being others esteemed. Right. And the Bible tells you can almost kind of expect rejection because Jesus was rejected. So the sweet tea tip for rejection wound is as follows. Name what happened.
Yes.
You absolutely have to go back and replay the story. Name what happened. The very thing. What does rejection look, feel, and sound like for you? It is specifically defined for you. And you'll be surprised that your definition looks different to other people. So they don't know that you're even feeling rejected. Okay.
Yep.
Normalize the F nervous system response. We're going to break this down in our next masterclass, more triggers, right? What they look, feel, and sound like, how they show up for you, and what are your top 2 F responses, right? Normalize the F nervous system response in the sense that your F responses don't have to be negative responses to not feeling safe. Okay. So we want to have a safe way of you operating in your fight, your flight, your freeze. There are healthy ways to fight, healthy ways to flight, healthy ways to freeze, and so on and so forth. Challenge the rejection story.
Yes.
Reframing that story. Okay. Was it rejection or was it God's protection? Maybe God put a wall up so that you wouldn't go down that path of that right. Maybe these are people that were never intended to be in your space, in your environment, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe it wasn't rejection, it was actually protection.
Yeah, and maybe it wasn't because you weren't good enough. Maybe it was you were better than you thought you were.
Or they're intimidated by you.
Exactly.
Okay. Practice self-compassion and slowly re-expose yourself to healthy risk.
Yes.
Don't dive in deep into the pools and just say, hey, I'm going to face this fear and I'm just going to dive in, the deep end. No, ease yourself into healthy risk.
And don't become risk averse either. Oftentimes, people who have experienced rejection, they can become averse to any type of rejection, so they avoid any risk at all.
Absolutely. All right, lemonade lessons for injustice wound. If you have an injustice wound, these are some challenges. You want to unpack it?
Absolutely. So those who have an injustice wound, what they want or desire, they want justice and fairness. They have a deep desire for things to be right and equitable. They want recognition, they want control, and they want perfection because they believe that everyone should be on the same common ground. And again, all of these wants and desires are oftentimes rooted in unrealistic expectations. But these are the things that a person with an injustice wound has experienced. What they've experienced is a disconnect when it comes to some of the equitable things that they're actually pursuing.
Now, it doesn't mean that everyone else around these wounds should walk on eggshells and
not at all
and feed this want and need. No,
not at all.
These are these wants and desires. This is how you know your wound is saying, hey, your inner child is saying, I want this, I want justice, I want fairness. So if you were betrayed at 8 years old, and then if you have an injustice wound and it happened at 8 years old, your 8-year-old inner child will rise up and say, this is not fair. And if you ever seen someone seem like, man, you're a grown adult, but it seemed like you just turned into like an 8-year-old person. Why are we behaving this way? Because their inner child just woke up.
Absolutely. So again, from the spiritual, and they also want power and respect, right? And this is important because often what happens is those with an injustice wound, when they move to a position of power and a power and title, then they become a perpetuator of injustice because now they have privilege. So that's why you have to be very careful again of how you approach this. For those again who are believers, we have to remember our role. Romans 12:19 says, and this is Paul speaking, beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave the way open for God's wrath and his judicious righteousness. For it is written in the scripture, back in Deuteronomy, it said this, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. So we have to be careful as we pursue justice, that we are focused on justice and not revenge or vengeance.
Amen. All right. The sweet tea tip for injustice, acknowledge the wrong.
Yes.
You have to give it a voice. Don't suppress it. Don't hold it in, right? That's not healthy. You have to release it. For those who are prayer warriors and you pray, there is such thing as called a purity prayer. We have to release things, meaning after you've prayed for people and all these things start to weigh on you, you have to pray to release it and lay it at God's feet. So you have to acknowledge things as they happen. Don't hold them, hoard them, or suppress them. Let anger have a safe place to be released.
Yes.
Notice release is huge for the person who has an injustice wound, because they will stack it up, honey.
Yeah.
Because you know why? You saving it in that briefcase for the day that you gonna show up as your own your defense attorney, and you ready. I got all the receipts. Okay. So you have to release those things, or you will just stack them up over years, and it will impact your heart, which is an organ that requires you to forgive to be able to love.
Yeah, make meaning without minimizing or maximizing. Call a thing a thing.
Yep.
It is what it is. So a life was lost by the hands of this particular person or by this particular group.
Event.
But we also shouldn't sensationalize other things as well.
Pursue justice where possible and stay connected to your support. All of these, we need to stay connected to our support. Who in our lives are our accountability people? You have counselors, you have therapists, you have spiritual leaders at your church and things like that. Stay connected to your support, because sometimes we don't see when our inner child awakens and we're going in. And sometimes when you going in, your inner child has showed up as the defense attorney, and that wound has been exposed.
All right. So as we move into betrayal, those who have a betrayal wound, what they want is to keep the peace. They want to avoid exposure. They want to minimize blame. They also want self-validation for what it is that has transpired and what has happened to them.
So they may say, well, just forget about it. We don't even need to identify who was wrong, who was this, who was that. Let's just move on.
Now, part of the challenge with a person who has a betrayal wound is navigating it being earned versus inflicted.
Absolutely.
In other words, them coming to a place of, this happened to me because I deserved it. This happened to me because my actions necessitated that this person betrayed me, or so I earned it, versus this person made a decision that was independent of me and decided to do what it is that they did. So,
or I betrayed them because they deserved it.
Exactly, correct. So this is an issue, again, of earned versus inflicted. And so Psalms 41:9 says, even my own close friend in whom I trusted, who ate my bread, has lifted up his heel against me, betraying me.
Jesus Christ experienced every single one of these wounds by his disciples, by people who literally he lived with. Every wound, Jesus Christ was like, man, rejection. I was rejected. Where are my bros at? Okay. They were gone when he was up there being accused of committing those crimes.
Absolutely. Now, as we get into these tips, now you all will notice, right, that with all of the first tips, right, notice that it is an acknowledgement of what has happened.
Yep.
You cannot heal what you will not confront. So the first thing is acknowledge the pain without minimizing it, meaning that you have to be able to know exactly what has happened to you and also how it has impacted you. Next, you want to identify exactly what has taken place. Like what was the offense or the event that is actually beneath the betrayal. So there's a situation that has happened, but what is the actual harm that it has caused you? Being able to put a name to it.
Absolutely.
Go back.
Oh, go back. Sorry.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So we also have to release ourselves from self-blame and to rebuild internal safety. In other words, we have to acknowledge that the person made a decision to do what it is that they did. Right. And so we have to acknowledge our role in that. And
what's the quote that we like about when someone when the world betrays you?
Yeah. When someone you don't know hurts you, you learn not to trust the world. When someone you knows hurts you, you learn not to trust yourself.
Absolutely. And in the counseling world, that's huge. To know that if you have a betrayal wound.
Absolutely. And then lastly, rewrite the identity. The betrayal created. So there was a narrative that you adopted when this betrayal happened to you. There was something that you accepted about you when this betrayal happened. So you have to take control of that, right? The Bible talks about taking every thought captive, right? And so you've got to take that thought and you've got to take that identity captive and line it up to what God says about you and who he says you are. And if it does not, if it does not equate, if it does not line up, then you got to throw that particular identity out.
And it contradicts street code.
That's right.
I grew up in the urban area, so did Walter. And it's like, oh, you got to get people before they get you. You know what I mean? Betray them before they can betray you, right? And no, you can't take that position because you essentially are going to become the bully, the person that's the villain all the time because you try not to be hurt.
That's right.
Right. And you will justify the harm that you do. All right. So eliminate lessons for abandonment wound and want. Man, the abandonment wound, it's constant reassurance and validation. You have to be careful that you can sometimes smother and drown your loved ones because it don't matter how many presents they buy you, it don't matter how much they say it with their mouth, it don't matter all the love languages. They could completely love bomb you in them areas, and you will still not feel loved and chosen and affirmed by them.
Or it doesn't matter how much your manager or your boss affirms you. It doesn't matter how many promotions you get. You just are not. You will never feel good enough.
You'll be ready for them to not show up, right? And so this can be a harsh place to live in because it's the chase and proof of devotion. On the other side, you can constantly be working hard. They pay you to work 40 hours, but you're going to work 80. I mean, you're gonna keep auditioning. I'm auditioning because I have to prove that I'm devoted to them, so they will love me. If I can give them that devotion 364 days, but if I miss that one day, guess what? It starts over, and your mind tells you, you know what? They're gonna abandon you.
Yeah, and there's a big difference between trying to building your worth in your work and then continuing to allow yourself to grow and develop. And having a growth mentality.
Yeah.
And so the scriptural perspective here is there's always support available. Know that support may not always be from man. Know that support may not always be from people that you know. But Psalms 27:10 says, although my father and my mother, my family, the people that I love, the ones that I counted on, they may have abandoned me, the Lord will take me up and adopt me as his child.
What? Guaranteed receipts right here in the word.
Yeah.
Again, the Bible has prepared us for every single one of these wounds. Be ready. And there's a healing approach. Okay? So I love that about the word. All right, abandonment wound, some sweet tea tips. Acknowledge the wound instead of blaming yourself. Just acknowledge the wound, right? Validate your emotions, reparent your inner child. This is a specific strategy in the psychological
dig into it. Yeah, dig into it.
So pretty much this is a strategy with your inner child. We definitely want you to go back with the wound the two wounds that you have. There was a story attached to that wound, and it started between birth and 18. So that story, there's people involved in that because between birth and 18, there's adults are responsible for you. So there was someone who contributed to this abandonment wound that's attached to this story. So the strategy that counselors and therapists and professionals use to reparent your inner child is at the age that occurred. So let's say if, you know what, my mom, she walked out on me at the age of 9. My mom walked out on me when I was 9 years old. Anytime you feel that sense of abandonment in any of your relationships, work, whatever, and you get so upset because people don't get it or whatever, you turn into your 9-year-old inner child. So to heal from that, there's a strategy where they say you need to reparent that inner child. And so you need to be able to speak to your 9-year-old self and to give your 9-year-old inner child what your 9-year-old inner child needed, not by people, so that your inner child can stop expecting it from external sources, from other people. You got to be able to say, you know what? You're going to talk to that inner child and say, you know what? Nope, you're going to sit down and you're going to be all right because I'm here. I am an adult now and I'm responsible for parenting you. You don't have to show up as a 9-year-old defense attorney anymore. Sit down, be quiet. You're going to pray. You're going to listen to your music. You got all your strategies ready to go. And you're going to deal with that situation very differently. And you're not going to let your 9-year-old inner child take over so you can show up and show out. And people looking at you like, oh, child, she crazy. Why she acting like a child? And then you offended because they're like, man, why are you acting like this? They're looking at you like, what's going on with you? Because you don't even realize you have transformed into your 9-year-old self. That is what reparenting your inner child does. It is being able to speak to the pain of the 9-year-old or whenever that wound first occurred, and to be able to speak to it and say, you're going to sit down, you're going to cease right here. And this is what we're going to do. You reparent your inner child.
And effectively doing that actually leads to the last two, which is actually being able to build internal safety and also challenging the core belief about yourself that people are not going to show up for you, but you are learning to show up for yourself.
Yeah, and believe me, parenting your inner child is a whole process, y'all. All right, we do that in counseling. It's literally let the inner child say what the inner child want to say, what the inner child was never able to say because the adults had the power when you were younger, right? You couldn't say, "Mama, you was a horrible mama," without mama probably looking at you like, "Who the heck you think you're talking to?" Right? So that reparenting allows your inner child to really say authentically what they experience, so you can put a voice to it.
Yep. And I believe the last one, which is humiliation. Humiliation wants and desires freedom and autonomy, validation and worthiness, self-expression and authenticity. And so this is remembering that distinction invites discussion, right? In other words, when you're different, people going to talk about you.
Yep.
When there is something that is unique or specific about you, it is going to come up in discussion, and being okay with that. And Ephesians 2:10 says, we are God's workmanship, his masterwork, a work of art created in Christ Jesus, reborn from above, spiritually transformed, renewed, ready to be used for good works, which God prepared for us beforehand, taking paths which he set, so that we will walk in them, living the good life which he prearranged and made ready for us. And so in doing this, right, we are oftentimes going to be subjected to the criticisms or the remarks of other people because they don't understand how we're wired. They don't understand oftentimes what they're looking at, right? And so we have to be able to align ourselves again with who God created us to be.
Yeah, and I like to think about people as going to an art gallery museum, and there's a variety of art forms and genres. This is our community. We're not going to understand everyone, but that's why God requires us to have peace, patience, love, joy, all the fruits of the spirit, because that's what it requires for us to be in community. Humiliation wounds. Some of the sweet tea tips is name the experience without shame.
And can you give the definition of shame? Because you do a good job of defining shame.
Yeah. Yes, I like to do a half and half between guilt and shame.
Yes.
Guilt is I did something wrong. Shame is I am a bad person because of the wrong I did. So guilt is I did something wrong. Shame is when you attack your I am. I am a bad person because of what I did. Shame is dangerous.
Yeah.
It calls God a liar. God says you were beautiful, you were chosen, you were a high priest. All of these things in the Bible it says about your I am. Yeah. Anytime you say, and I have a mentor, her name is Dr. Bessie Flesher. She has a whole ministry. She talks about the power of your I am. If you say anything after I am that does not align with God,
you made God a liar.
You lied on God, or God a liar, or you lied on God.
Yeah, and that's so important.
Self-abuse.
And that is so important because oftentimes we will allow experiences to become indictments against our identity.
Yes.
And we have to be very careful of that. Even when we are at fault, being careful not to allow whatever it is that we did to now become a part of our identity of how we now categorize ourselves.
Absolutely. And in our book, there's a poem that I wrote called Bloody Murder. And it talks about, a situation in college between the two of us. And the first question I have in there is a murderer's life worth saving? And that's the question that I had to go before God and I to respond to that question. But it's a great poem to listen to, because I had to separate my identity from the event, from the choice that I made.
Yeah. Okay? And then as you go back to that memory, be sure that you approach it with a compassionate lens. Now, not just a compassionate lens for you, but a compassionate lens also for the people that humiliated you.
Everyone involved.
Now that's a layer of growth and maturity that you got to work towards. But sometimes, again, you have to show compassion to the people that are actually persecuting you, because you recognize that they may be doing it from a place of their own insecurity.
They humiliate because they were humiliated.
Exactly.
People abandoned because they were abandoned. People abused because they were abused. Amen. All right. And that pretty much concludes and closes us out with these two quotes. And we want to open it up if you guys have any questions or just any comments or curious. If you never heal from what hurts you, then you will bleed on people who did not cut you.
Absolutely. Very powerful one. And then the next one is trauma causes people to remain stuck in the present light of an unchanging past. So they are stuck in this place of what has happened to them, but they can't get past the perspective and the place that they are in right now, and they've got an old mindset.
All right. And you can always visit our website, things that we have going on. We definitely appreciate you guys for being here today. And yeah, we want to open it up if you guys have any questions. It says we're unstable. Let me make sure I turn our video off. All right. You guys have any questions for us?
Go ahead, Shanoa. We heard you. Go ahead, Shanoa.
Oh, I was just saying thank you so much for hosting this, because like I'm telling you, my whole mindset has changed and I've become more aware of how I show up as it relates to the wounds that I have. And so Cam just shared something really insightful with me, like as something to work on. He said that what'd you call it? Docile. Docile domineering. And I was shocked when I heard it initially, but I understand what he's saying. So I have to work on the wounds that are associated with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just doing the work and digging into it. And again, we want to be clear. A lot of this, it sounds good, but it is easier said than done, but it is a worthy work and it is an important work. And as you delve into it, you will find, again, it will benefit not just you individually, but all of your relationships in all of your areas as you really go about identifying what those emotional wounds are and really focusing on repairing that breach.
And making sure if you are single and you are dating, right, that you're not really just dating people who are going to feed the wound.
Yes.
Right? So I'm going to find someone that they're codependent. I'm codependent. Like, I don't want to be abandoned. So I'm clingy. They're clingy. This works. But it's not really a healthy attachment. Okay? The attachment style isn't healthy.
Yeah. And going back to the physical wound, right? When you have a wound, right? One of the most tricky places is when you have a scab. Because that scab is a cover for healing that is taking place. But if you remove that scab too early, it will now revert back to a wound because now it's exposed again. And so even being able to speak from a place where you're not speaking from a wound or a scab, but recognizing that you got to get to a place of full healing. And then once you have a scar, the question then becomes, will that scar be an embarrassment to you when people ask you about it because it's visible? Or will you allow it to be a testimony for you to be able to speak into the lives of people because of the experience that scab comes from? I mean, that scar comes from. So we've got to be very careful. And once we're healed, once we're whole, and people know certain things about, they see some of our scars, not being ashamed of it.
Hey, and that's huge because God will call you out. He'll be like, hey, is this your story or was that my rescue story? And I know I have said some very harsh things to women in the sense that during the healing journey, where I push, I'm like, look now, we're doing this work together. I'm partnering with you, but I got to push you in this area because you want to keep this story yours. You think this story is about you. This is God's rescue story.
Yeah.
You can't afford to be embarrassed or ashamed or humiliated by it, or guess what? God ain't gonna be able to use you in ministry until you cross this threshold.
Yeah, and we are seeing this in so many of our families when we talk about generational curses. A lot of these generational curses are persisting because honest, authentic conversations are not being had. Secrets are being kept. And so what's happening is that these same issues are showing up in our children. They're showing up in our grandchildren. So we've got to get to a place where we're willing to be honest about our experiences.
Any other thoughts or comments or insights?
Well, I just have to say that personally, I know I love it. I love the work. I love the conversation. This is why I have invited someone else to this conversation, because it just makes you do the work. And it's in the different areas. But the most important thing about this work is the self-awareness. So as we're doing this work, it really is to have that healthy relationship, giving us the tips and the tools to really think about how do we just doing the me work. That is so important before I can even really get to that me work. And like you said, not forgetting God in that me work. And so just the way this is outlined and someone in the chat asked was this going to be on YouTube. This is a great session. It's something that is needed at this time, this whole series. So absolutely love it. Thank you both. I love it too. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. No, we thank you all. Thank you again for being here. Commend yourself to it.
Absolutely. Well, and that's our sister and our brother from Get Your Ships Together. Yes. And
Yes,
October
indeed.
we get our me work on at a great conference with great people. And so yeah, we'll definitely keep you guys engaged with all the events where you can be with like-minded individuals who are really trying to do their individual work and collective work in positive, wonderful, fun environments. So
yeah. So if you all, again, thank you all so much for attending. If you have not done so, please go on Google, give us a 5-star Google review. We
You gonna
really
ask
appreciate it. Yes, absolutely. No, we're gonna speak it by faith. So yes, please give us a 5-star Google review, and we greatly appreciate it. Also, for those of you who are just again hearing about us, again, this masterclass is based upon our book, How the West Was Won. If you have not picked up How the West Was Won, you can absolutely do that. It is available on our website. You can also pick it up electronically via Amazon, Barnes and Noble. And so, yeah, it is. It's a good read. It's a really good book.
Combination of poetry and short stories. So we appreciate your time. We want to honor your time. Thank you again. We will definitely have the replay of part 1, part 2. And yeah, look forward to you guys joining us next quarter for part 3. All right, you guys have a wonderful Saturday, and we will stay on. If anyone just wants to maybe privately say something, we'll do that. And I'm going to stop the recording right now.